In 1995, 3 years later, again on the Super Famicom, we got Dragon Quest VI. I can honestly say that everything in the game was improved on, from the graphics that are much more detailed to the character animation, and music that was fantastic. The game was published by Enix, but developed by a company called Heartbeat, who went on to do Dragon Quest VII as well. The story this time takes place between the normal world and the dream world, as our characters enter into the dream world as spirits and have to go back and forth between these worlds to complete certain quests. The class system returns from 3, but you don't need to wait till level 20 to switch classes. Now you can master a few classes and you can upgrade to a hybrid vocation. Example, you can become a gladiator after learning warrior and martial artist and taking them to rank 8. However, there are 2 jobs that require items. For the Dragon vocation, you'll need the Dragonic Diligence Scroll, and for the Liquid Metal Slime vocation, you'll need the Liquid Metal Mind Scroll. Music is very catchy and fitting, and the orchestrated versions of this music are incredible. The game cost over $100 in Japan, and was a whopping 32 megabyte cartridge. This was also becoming a trend for the Dragon Quest series at this point. No US version for the Super Nintendo ever came out. I remember reading about number 6 in game magazines at the time, like Die Hard Game Fan, and was really bummed out that it never showed up on our shores. It was finally released on the DS years later, so Western audiences that had never played the translated ROM version could experience this enhanced version. Now, the long wait began for Dragon Quest VII, and the wait was long. In fact, it was 5 years later, with several delays, but in 2000, Dragon Quest VII was released. Again developed by Heartbeat, this title finally made the jump to 3D, but appeared later in the PS1's lifespan, and it shows. Because of the long development time, it looked a little dated on release. Characters and backgrounds of combat were okay and did the job, but wouldn't win any awards. They were also quite ambitious with this game, and it is honored with being the longest game in the series, and it can take a normal player 140 hours to complete. The game world is massive and has the party exploring individual continents in the past and placing shards throughout to unlock the continents in present day. Then you have to explore them again. This game is very stretched out, and it feels it at times. The stories of how people are affected years later is interesting, but it loses its appeal very fast. I also think this is because of the music though. Incredibly well composed as it is, it's very somber in tone and can come off as sometimes kind of depressing. Just my opinion. The dungeons and combat were really the same as the past, and the class system is very much like 6, but this time with more classes and the ability to learn custom classes. The game was delayed many times and had a very small staff working on it, of around 40 people. But 7 was a huge hit in Japan, and it marked the return of Dragon Warrior to the US in 2001. Also included in the game was an advertisement for the translated PlayStation 1 port of Dragon Quest IV that was supposed to come out but never did. The game has been ported to the 3DS in Japan, and we are hopeful for a release. In 2003, Square Enix was formed, and in 2004, they brought out the amazing Dragon Quest VIII to the Sony PlayStation 2. Everything from the graphics to the battle system got a complete overhaul to bring it to a more modern time. This was all thanks to a small legendary development company called Level 5 that breathed new life into the series. The graphics were more cel-shaded, and instead of super deformed characters, they actually looked like Akira Toriyama's original designs. Character and monster animations were fluid, and the world was very beautiful and inviting to explore. Towns and dungeons had their own personalities and were all rotated and immersive in full 3D. Battles are still first person for the most part, but now you can see your characters actually attack and cast spells as the camera rotates around them. This really brought the battles to life and was a welcome change from the first 7 previous games. You can now level up different weapons with skills and unlock more powerful attacks. There is also the alchemy pot that lets you create unique and rare items by combining other items and weapons you find around the world. So make sure you hang on to all those ingredients you find and look up a fact on how to create some of those rare items. There's also a monster coliseum where you can pit monsters against each other and win special prizes. And in 2005, this is the first game to be released as Dragon Quest in the US and not Dragon Warrior. The name Dragon Warrior was finally dropped. Also as a note, the US version is given the orchestrated soundtrack, while the Japanese version just uses the synthesized music score. The English version also has dubbing in it, which was a first for the series. The Japanese never got the optimized version of the game, and that's a first. And I remember playing the game in demo form back on the PlayStation 2 back in the day, and it blew me away. The game just was like an anime come to real life, but in game form. In what, at the time, was a very controversial move in 2009, Square Enix brought Dragon Quest IX to the Nintendo DS handheld. This was the first time that a main game in the series was being brought out to a handheld. I gotta admit, at first when I heard this news, I was upset, especially after the amazing Dragon Quest VIII. It seemed like a downgrade to go to a handheld graphically. The more I learned about the game, the more excited I became, as this was the first Dragon Quest game to be playable with your friends via Wi-Fi. You and up to 3 others can custom make your characters and play the game solo, or you can drop in on your friend's game. In combat, you can make your attacks and see them carried out, and you share the loot and experience which you can take back to your own world. You can hunt rare monsters and go in secret dungeons to obtain rare items. The game was a lot of fun, and we used to get together at a local game store, Game Deals, and play and share loot and trade secret dungeon locations. It was great having a low-level character and journeying into a high-level dungeon with super high-level characters. In one battle with some Metal King slimes, I actually gained 30 levels from defeating them, but having the party keep me alive to do so. This is also the game that introduced Kim to Dragon Quest when it was released in 2010. She at first wasn't that into it, but when she understood how to level up and make money and upgrade equipment, she was hooked. She is now a dedicated collector of all that is Dragon Quest, and has vowed to finish every game in the main series. As of present, she has finished 4, 6, 8, and 9, and just started 5. The game is really fun to share with your friends, and that's the trick to Dragon Quest IX, and that's where it shines. Also, I will mention Dragon Quest X. Right now, it's only in Japan, it's an online game, and we're hopeful for a US release. And also, because I have them here, I'll just briefly mention Dragon Quest Kenshin and Dragon Quest Swords. They are side games to the series that I will actually review another time, but they're really cool sword slashing monster fighting games. If anybody wants to experience any of the older games like 4 to 6, they're available on the DS, and they are great upgraded ports. In Japan, there was upgraded versions of 1 to 4 on the Super Famicom and PlayStation 1 and Game Boy Color versions. And also, Dragon Quest V was given a major overhaul to the PlayStation 2 in Japan only. There are many side games as well, like Dragon Quest Monsters and Tornico's Mysterious Dungeon. Yes, Taloon has his own game, and it actually came out over here. Well, I hope you enjoyed my look back on the entire Dragon Quest series. It's been a long time coming. It was a very complex one to do, but I had to do it because I love this series so much. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time.